The old woman's fingers traced across the holographic display, watching images flicker to life in the darkened room. Lucy Grant had seen these recordings 1,000 times, but today they carried different weight. 300 years of history played before her eyes, showing the moment everything changed for humanity. The Blue Death had come without warning. Colony after colony fell silent as the plague spread through human settlements across 12 worlds. Medical facilities overflowed with dying patients. Scientists worked around the clock, finding nothing that could stop the invisible killer. Humanity's brief adventure among the stars seemed destined to end in mass graves. Then the Darwin arrived. Lucy watched the footage of their ships appearing in Earth's orbit, elegant vessels that moved like birds through space. The aliens inside stood barely 4 feet tall, with smooth blue skin and large eyes that reflected genuine concern. They had been monitoring human distress signals for weeks, studying the plague from afar. Elder Torin's ancestor had spoken those first words to humanity. "We have medicine that can help. We ask nothing in return except that you remember this kindness." Human leaders had been suspicious at first. Nothing came free in the universe, but desperation won over caution. The Darwin shared their technology, teaching human doctors how to synthesize the cure. Within months, the Blue Death was eradicated. Billions of human lives were saved by aliens who wanted no payment, no territory, no trade agreements, just friendship and memory. Lucy closed the historical files and stood from her desk. Her office overlooked the memorial hall, where visitors came daily to learn about humanity's darkest hour and the aliens who pulled them back from extinction. She had spent 40 years as Earth's ambassador to the Darwin worlds, maintaining the friendship that began with that ancient rescue. Her communication device chimed. The urgent tone made her stomach tighten. "Ambassador Grant, we have a situation at Outpost Meridian. Darwin ships approaching. They're damaged, badly." Lucy rushed to the communications center. The screens showed 3 Darwin vessels limping through space, their hulls scarred by weapons fire. These were not the elegant ships she remembered. These were survivors of something terrible. "Open a channel," she ordered. The face that appeared on screen made her heart sink. Elder Torin looked decades older than when she had last seen him 6 months ago. His blue skin had turned pale, and his eyes held the kind of pain that came from witnessing horrors. "Lucy," he said softly, "forgive us for coming unannounced. We had nowhere else to go." "What happened?" "The Kroth Empire. They came to our worlds with demands. Submit to their rule or face extermination. We tried diplomacy. We offered them trade, culture, anything to avoid conflict. The Darwin have never been warriors. We believed peace could be negotiated with anyone." Torin's image flickered, as his damaged ship struggled to maintain the signal. "We were wrong. The Kroth do not negotiate. They conquer. In 6 months they have taken 90% of our worlds. Billions of my people are dead or enslaved. Those of us who escaped are scattered across the galaxy, hiding in any corner that will shelter us." Lucy felt cold spreading through her chest. "How many refugees are with you?" "These 3 ships carry 12,000 souls, all that remains of the Saratha colony. We come seeking sanctuary, not soldiers. We know humans have your own worlds to protect. We ask only for a safe place to preserve what is left of our species." Around the communications center, human officers listened in silence. Lucy saw the same expression on every face: recognition, understanding. The Darwin had not come demanding aid. They asked only for shelter, the same way humanity had once needed shelter from a plague. "Captain Williams," Lucy addressed the military officer beside her, "prepare medical teams and housing facilities. Our friends need help." "Yes, Ambassador." Lucy turned back to Torin. "Bring your people to Outpost Meridian. We will provide everything you need. Food, medicine, safety. But Elder Torin, I need you to understand something. You saved humanity when we had nothing to offer you. That creates a debt. Lucy, no, we did not save you to create obligation. The Kroth Empire is too powerful. If humanity fights them, you will share our fate. We cannot ask that of you. You are not asking. I am telling you. 300 years ago, your people looked at dying humans and chose kindness over calculation. They did not weigh the costs. They did not debate whether we were worth saving. They simply helped because it was right. Lucy straightened, feeling the weight of her next words. Send me everything you have on the Kroth Empire. Their military strength, their tactics, their territories. Then get your people to safety. Because humanity is about to remind the galaxy what it means to repay a debt. Torin's eyes widened. You cannot be serious. Your species has worked so hard to build a peaceful civilization. Do not throw that away for us. The Dalwin did not save humanity so we could become cowards who abandon our friends. They saved us so we could become the kind of species that stands up when others cannot. We remember the kindness you showed us. Now you will see what humans do with that memory. Lucy ended the transmission and turned to face Captain Williams and the assembled officers. Every eye was on her. Contact Earth Command. Tell them we need an emergency session of the Planetary Council. The Dalwin are under human protection as of this moment. Anyone who wants to harm them will have to go through us first. Captain Williams hesitated. Ambassador, the Kroth Empire has conquered 3 species in the last decade. Their military forces outnumber ours significantly. I know the odds, Captain, but 300 years ago, the Dalwin did not calculate odds when they saved us. They saw people who needed help and they acted. We owe them the same courage they showed humanity in our darkest hour. She walked to the window, looking out at the stars where Dalwin refugees were even now fleeing toward human space. Besides, the Kroth Empire is about to learn something important about humans. We have very long memories, and we always pay our debts. The chamber filled with voices speaking dozens of languages, all translated through neural implants into a cacophony of argument and fear. Daniel Ross sat quietly in the human delegation seat, watching representatives from 12 species debate the crisis that was reshaping galactic politics. The Galactic Trade Council had been founded 2 centuries ago to prevent exactly this kind of situation. Member species agreed to resolve disputes through commerce and conversation, not conquest. For the most part, it had worked. Small conflicts were settled, trade routes remained open, and the galaxy enjoyed relative peace. Then the Kroth Empire expanded beyond their home systems. High Chancellor Vren of the Salth Confederacy called for order, his scaled face projected onto screens throughout the chamber. The Salth were an old species, cautious and calculating. They had survived a dozen galactic power shifts by knowing when to bend and when to stand firm. We must acknowledge reality, Vren said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. The Kroth military has proven superior to every force that has opposed them. The Minter Collective fell in 3 months. The Boreal Federation surrendered after losing their core worlds. The Dalwin held out for 6 months only because the Kroth were occupied elsewhere. A representative from the Wavian Harmony spoke up, their translated voice trembling. What are you suggesting, Chancellor? That we simply accept Kroth expansion as inevitable? I am suggesting we avoid provoking an empire that has shown no mercy to those who resist. The Kroth have not yet attacked Council member worlds. Perhaps if we maintain neutrality, we can preserve what we have. Daniel listened to more arguments follow the same pattern. Fear disguised as pragmatism. Surrender presented as strategic wisdom. He had heard it all before in human history. Appeasement never worked, but every generation seemed to need to learn that lesson again. Finally, he pressed the button to request speaking time. The chamber quieted. Humanity was still considered a junior member of the Council, having joined only 70 years ago. Most species viewed humans as energetic but naive, lacking the wisdom that came from millennia of galactic experience. Daniel stood, aware that billions across the galaxy were watching this session. The human government has made a decision regarding the Darwin situation. We are formally extending military protection to all Darwin refugees and remaining colonies. Any Kroth forces that attempt to harm the Darwin will be met with human military response. The chamber exploded with noise. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding explanations, calling the humans foolish, warning of consequences. Vren raised a clawed hand for silence. When order returned, he addressed Daniel directly. Representative Ross, surely you understand the implications of what you are saying. The Kroth Empire fields military forces that dwarf your defensive fleets. They have weapons technology developed over thousands of years of conquest. Your species has been spacefaring for only 3 centuries. We understand the odds perfectly, Chancellor. Then you understand you are choosing extinction for your entire species. Over what? The Darwin are already defeated. Protecting their remnants will not change that reality. Daniel pulled up a holographic display, showing historical records. Images appeared throughout the chamber of Darwin ships arriving at Earth orbit 300 years ago. 3 centuries ago, humanity faced extinction from the Blue Death Plague. We had no cure, no hope, and nothing to offer in trade for help. The Darwin came to us anyway. They shared their medical technology freely, asking nothing in return except that we remember their kindness. He let the images play, showing human children being treated with Darwin medicine, showing the plague finally defeated. The Darwin did not calculate the odds before helping us. They did not debate whether humanity was worth saving. They did not consider what strategic advantage our survival might bring them. They simply saw people who needed help, and they acted with compassion. A representative from the Tellarian Assembly spoke up. That was an admirable act, certainly, but sentiment cannot overcome military reality. The Kroth will destroy you. Perhaps, but the Darwin saved billions of human lives when we could not save ourselves. That creates a debt that transcends military calculations. If the cost of repaying that debt is fighting a war we might lose, then that is a cost humanity is willing to pay. Vren's expression was unreadable. You are young species speaking with the passion of youth. In time, you will learn that survival requires compromise. Honor is a luxury the weak cannot afford. Daniel felt anger rising but kept his voice level. With respect, Chancellor, we have a different perspective. Honor is not a luxury. It is the foundation of civilization. The moment we abandon those who helped us because protecting them becomes dangerous, we lose what makes us worth protecting in the first place. He looked around the chamber at faces representing dozens of species, seeing varying degrees of sympathy, skepticism, and fear. I know what you are all thinking, that humans are naive, that we do not understand galactic realities, that we will learn through painful experience to be more cautious. But here is what humanity learned from 3 centuries of studying the stars. Civilizations fall not because they fight and lose, but because they surrender their principles before the battle even begins. The chamber fell silent. The Kroth Empire expanded because every species they threatened made the same calculation. Each one decided that someone else's extinction was preferable to their own risk. Each one abandoned allies to preserve themselves. And each time, the Kroth grew stronger while the rest of the galaxy grew more isolated and afraid. Daniel closed his display. Humanity will not make that calculation. The Darwin protected us when we were helpless. We will protect them now that they face the same situation. If that seems foolish to this council, then perhaps this council needs to reconsider what wisdom actually means. He sat down. Vren studied Daniel for a long moment. The South Confederacy will not join this mad venture. We will continue to pursue diplomatic solutions with the Kroth Empire. Other representatives quickly agreed. One by one, the council members declared their neutrality, their commitment to peaceful resolution, their hope that humanity would reconsider this reckless course. Daniel listened without response. He had not expected support. The message was not for the council anyway. It was for the Kroth Empire, and for the Dalwin refugees scattered across the galaxy. Humanity was declaring to everyone watching that some debts were worth dying to repay. As the session adjourned, Vren approached Daniel privately. "I hope your species survives long enough to regret this decision, Representative Ross. You have courage, I will grant you that. But courage without power is just another name for suicide." Daniel met the Solth leader's eyes. 300 years ago, the Dalwin had power but chose to use it for kindness instead of conquest. They taught humanity that civilization is measured not by what you can take, but by what you are willing to give. We intend to honor that lesson. He left the council chamber, knowing that across human space, fleets were already beginning to mobilize. Admiral Patricia Cole watched through the observation window as ship after ship emerged from construction docks around Earth. The orbital facilities had not seen this level of activity since the colony wars 200 years ago, when humanity fought itself over resources and territory. That conflict had nearly destroyed human civilization before cooler heads prevailed. Now those same shipyards were building for a different kind of war. "Status report," Patricia said to her command staff. Commander Lewis pulled up tactical displays. 15 colony worlds have contributed their defensive fleets. That gives us 312 warships ready for deployment. Another 100 ships are being retrofitted from civilian vessels. Armament factories are running triple shifts producing missiles, railgun ammunition, and shield generators. Patricia studied the numbers. 300 ships sounded impressive until compared against Kroth military strength. Intelligence reports suggested the Empire could field over 2,000 warships, with reinforcements available from conquered territories. What about the civilian response? "Overwhelming, Admiral. We have more volunteers than we can train. Every military academy is packed. Engineering firms are offering their facilities for weapons development. Even retired veterans from the colony wars are requesting reactivation." Dr. Raymond Kim entered the command center, carrying data tablets filled with technical specifications. The elderly scientist had spent 50 years developing defensive technologies for human colonies. Now he was racing to give those colonies a fighting chance against superior firepower. "Admiral, I think we have something. The Kroth rely heavily on energy shielding that deflects conventional weapons, but their shields are optimized for the plasma weapons used by species they have previously conquered. Human railgun technology uses kinetic energy in ways their defenses are not designed to handle." Patricia leaned forward. "How much of an advantage does that give us?" "Maybe 20% better penetration on their capital ships. Not enough to guarantee victory, but enough to surprise them. The Kroth have been conquering for so long, they have stopped adapting. They expect every species to fight the same way." "Humans do not fight the same way as anyone else," Patricia said quietly. "What else do you have?" Raymond pulled up more designs. Electronic warfare systems that can disrupt their communications, missiles with unpredictable flight paths, mines that look like debris until enemy ships get close. We are also developing psychological warfare programs." Commander Lewis frowned. Psychological warfare against an empire built on conquest. Every military force has assumptions about how battles should proceed. The Kroth assume their enemies will behave rationally, preserving forces when defeat seems certain, surrendering when odds become impossible. We need to violate those assumptions, make them doubt what they think they know. Patricia understood. "You want us to fight like humans." "Exactly. The Kroth have conquered species that valued survival above all else. They have never faced an opponent willing to trade one ship for one of theirs, or to ram damaged vessels into enemy formations rather than retreat. They have never fought anyone who treated every battle as if losing was not an option. A communication officer interrupted. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from Outpost Meridian. The Dalwin refugees want to speak with you." Patricia nodded, and Elder Torin's image appeared on the main screen. The alien leader looked exhausted, the weight of his species near extinction visible in every line of his face. "Admiral Cole, I have been speaking with Ambassador Grant about humanity's decision to protect my people. I must ask you to reconsider. You are preparing for war against an enemy that has destroyed civilizations older and more powerful than yours. This is not your burden to carry. With respect, Elder Torin, the Dalwin made it our burden 300 years ago when you saved us from extinction. You did not ask if we were worth the effort. You did not calculate whether helping us provided strategic advantage. You simply acted because it was right. We shared medicine, not military forces. We risked resources, not lives." Patricia smiled sadly. "You risked something more important than lives, Elder. You risked your principles by helping a species you knew nothing about. You bet everything on the hope that kindness would matter in the universe. Well, you won that bet. Humanity became exactly the kind of species that repays its debts, regardless of cost." Torin's large eyes shimmered with emotion. "If humanity is destroyed fighting for us, how can we live with that burden? The same way we lived with the burden of being saved by you, by remembering that some things matter more than survival, by becoming the kind of people who deserve the sacrifice made on our behalf. Your people saved us, and that act changed what humanity became. Now we get to return that gift." She gestured to the ships assembling outside the observation window. Every human serving in this fleet volunteered. Every colony contributed ships freely. Every factory worker building weapons knows exactly what we are preparing for. This is not a decision made by politicians, Elder Torin. This is humanity choosing who we want to be. And if you lose, then we lose fighting for our friends instead of hiding while they face extinction alone. The Dalwin taught us that civilization is measured by what you do when nobody is forcing you to help. Well, nobody is forcing us. We choose this. Torin was quiet for a long moment. "Then my people owe humanity a debt we can never repay." "You already repaid it, 300 years before we even needed to call it in. You showed us what real civilization looks like. Everything we are about to do comes from that lesson." After Torin disconnected, Commander Lewis spoke up. "Admiral, even with our tactical advantages, the odds are still heavily against us. Fleet Command estimates we need at least twice as many ships to have a reasonable chance against the Croth." "Then we will make up the difference with something the Croth do not have," Patricia said. "Motivation. Every one of their soldiers fights for conquest and glory. Every one of ours fights to protect friends who once protected us. I will take motivated defenders over confident attackers any day." Raymond Kim nodded agreement. "I have been studying Croth military history. They have been winning for so long, they have forgotten what it feels like to face an enemy that refuses to accept defeat. That will be our greatest weapon." Patricia turned back to the window, watching the fleet grow larger by the hour. Ships built by human hands, crewed by human volunteers, armed with human innovation. Not the largest fleet in the galaxy, not the most advanced, but possibly the most determined. "Get me Captain Williams. The Fifth Fleet deploys in 48 hours. We have Dalwin colonies to defend and an empire to teach a lesson about humanity." Across human space, billions watched as their civilization prepared for war. Not a war of conquest or expansion. Not a war for resources or territory. A war fought for a single principle, that kindness deserved protection and debts of honor transcended calculations of power. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humans decided to repay what they owed. The Kroth invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel with the precision of an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds. 200 warships materialized in orbit around Saratha, the last remaining independent Dalwin colony. Commander Harek watched from his flagship as landing forces prepared to descend. This would be routine. Every species the Kroth encountered followed the same pattern: initial resistance, then retreat, then surrender or extinction. The Dalwin had lasted longer than most, but their pacifist nature made final victory inevitable. "Scan for defensive installations," Harek ordered. "Commander, the planet shows minimal military presence. Some orbital platforms, a few aging defensive satellites. Nothing that can threaten our forces." "Any sign of their fleet?" "Negative, sir. Intelligence suggests most remaining Dalwin ships fled toward neutral space. Saratha has approximately 12 million inhabitants with no military protection." Harek felt the familiar satisfaction of an easy conquest. His clan would earn glory for this victory, cementing their status within Kroth society. 3 more worlds and he would qualify for the elite warrior caste, gaining wealth and privilege for his entire bloodline. "Begin landing operations. I want ground forces establishing control of major population centers within 6 hours. Prepare broadcast systems to announce terms of surrender." His tactical officer suddenly straightened. "Commander, new contacts. Multiple ships emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system." "Dalwin reinforcements?" "Negative, sir. Ship configurations do not match any known Dalwin designs. Transponder signals identify them as human vessels." Harek pulled up the tactical display. 60 human warships were moving into formation between his fleet and the planet. He felt confusion more than concern. Humans were not involved in this conflict. They had no territory in this region, no strategic interest in defending the Dalwin. "Open a channel to the human fleet." The face that appeared on his screen belonged to a human military officer, Captain Reed Williams, according to the identification protocols. The human looked tired but determined. "Kroth vessels, this is the human Fifth Fleet. Saratha colony is under our protection. Withdraw your forces immediately or face military consequences." Harek almost laughed. "Human, you are interfering in matters that do not concern your species. The Dalwin are defeated. This world will submit to Kroth authority. Leave now and we will allow your ships to depart safely." "I am giving you one more chance, Commander. Withdraw peacefully or be removed by force." Now Harek did laugh. "You field 60 ships against our 200. Your species is young and inexperienced. We have been conquering worlds since before your ancestors learned to make fire. This is your final warning. Depart or be destroyed." Reed's expression never changed. "We were really hoping you would choose the hard way." The human fleet suddenly accelerated to attack speed, ships spreading into formations that made no tactical sense. Rather than concentrating force against specific targets, they scattered across the battlefield like debris. "All ships battle formation. Destroy the human fleet." Kroth warships opened fire with plasma weapons that had obliterated countless enemy vessels. But the human ships were moving in unpredictable patterns, using thrust vectors that wasted fuel but made targeting difficult. Several shots missed completely, confusing Kroth gunners accustomed to fighting opponents who moved efficiently. Human railguns returned fire. Solid projectiles traveling at a significant fraction of light speed punched through Kroth shields designed to deflect energy weapons. 3 Kroth ships took critical damage in the opening salvo. "What are those weapons? Why are our shields ineffective?" "Unknown, Commander. The projectiles are simple kinetic rounds, but they are penetrating our defensive systems." Harek watched as the battle developed in ways he had never experienced. Human ships were taking damage but refusing to withdraw. One vessel, trailing atmosphere from a hull breach, deliberately rammed into a Kroth destroyer rather than retreating. Both ships exploded in a flash of nuclear fire. "They are insane," his tactical officer whispered. "That ship could have withdrawn and repaired." But more surprises came. Small human fighters were deploying mines disguised as wreckage. Kroth ships pursuing damaged human vessels suddenly found themselves in fields of explosive devices. Electronic warfare systems crashed Kroth communication networks, forcing fleet coordination to fall back on slower backup systems. And throughout the battle, human forces broadcast on all channels. Not threats or demands, but history. The story of how the Dalwyn had saved humanity from the Blue Death. Images of Dalwyn medical teams working alongside human doctors. Testimonials from humans whose families had survived because aliens chose kindness over indifference. "Why are they telling us this?" Harek demanded. An intelligence officer responded. "Psychological warfare, Commander. They want us to understand why they are willing to die for the Dalwyn. They are trying to make us question the righteousness of our conquest. Warriors do not question, we conquer. That is our purpose." But doubt had entered Harek's mind. The Kroth Empire had faced desperate defenders before, species fighting for their home worlds, their resources, their survival. But these humans were fighting for aliens they had no biological connection to, defending a world that belonged to another species entirely. They were fighting for a debt. More human ships arrived. These were not military vessels but converted civilian craft, cargo haulers with weapons welded to their hulls, science ships carrying experimental armaments, even a luxury passenger liner that had been retrofitted as a missile platform. "Commander, these reinforcements include civilian volunteers. They are broadcasting that they came from 12 different human colonies." Harek watched his tactical displays fill with red warning indicators. 15 Kroth ships destroyed or crippled, dozens more damaged. The humans were losing more ships proportionally, but they showed no sign of retreating. A damaged human destroyer broadcast a message directly to Harek's flagship. The face on screen belonged to a young woman, Lieutenant Amy Foster, according to her uniform. Half her bridge was on fire behind her. "Kroth Commander, I want you to know something. My grandmother was 9 years old when the Blue Death Plague hit her colony. She was dying, with maybe days to live. Then the Dalwyn came. They saved her life and the lives of everyone she knew. She lived another 80 years, had children and grandchildren, and taught all of us about the aliens who chose kindness when they could have chosen profit." The lieutenant smiled, despite the destruction around her. "I am here because of that choice. Every human in this fleet is here because the Dalwyn saved our ancestors when they had nothing to gain from it. You want to conquer? Fine, but you will have to go through people who remember what real civilization looks like." Her ship exploded a moment later, ramming a Kroth cruiser and taking it down with her. Harek looked at his casualty reports. 30% of his fleet destroyed or disabled. The humans had lost more ships, but dozens more were still arriving. They would keep coming, he suddenly realized. As long as any Dalwyn needed protection, humans would keep throwing themselves into battle. "Commander, recommend we withdraw and request reinforcements." Harek wanted to refuse. Retreat was shameful, but he was looking at a level of commitment his military training had never prepared him for. These humans were not fighting for survival or resources. They were fighting for something he could barely comprehend. Honor, gratitude, love for those who had shown them mercy in their darkest hour. "All ships fall back. We will report this to the Empire and return with overwhelming force." As the Kroth fleet retreated, Harek recorded his observations for the High Command. The humans were not a minor obstacle. They were something the Empire had never encountered before. An enemy that measured victory not by survival, but by loyalty to those who deserved protection. The galaxy was about to get much more complicated. News traveled faster than ships across the galaxy. Within days, Every species with access to communication networks had heard about the battle at Saratha. The Galactic Trade Council convened again, this time without the formal procedures. Representatives spoke over each other, demanding information, offering opinions, expressing shock at what humanity had done. High Chancellor Vren of the Solth Confederacy watched the chaos with ancient eyes that had witnessed 500 years of galactic politics. He had seen empires rise and fall, watched species make brilliant decisions and catastrophic mistakes, but he had never seen anything quite like this. The humans won, a junior Wavian representative asked, confusion clear in their translated voice. They did not win, Vren corrected. They forced a temporary Kroth retreat after sustaining heavy losses, but the Empire will return with greater forces. The humans merely bought time for one Dalwyn colony. At what cost? Reports indicate they lost over 40 ships and thousands of crew members defending a world that is not even theirs. Vren pulled up combat footage that had leaked from both sides of the battle. He watched human vessels fighting with a ferocity that seemed impossible for such a young species. Ships ramming enemy formations, damaged vessels refusing to withdraw, civilian volunteers flying converted cargo haulers against professional military forces. They lost 40 ships, Vren said slowly, and they gained something far more valuable. They proved they meant what they said. Across the chamber, representatives were having similar realizations. For decades, the Council had operated on careful calculations of self-interest. Species cooperated when profitable, remained neutral when dangerous, and quietly abandoned allies when the cost of friendship grew too high. Humanity had just demonstrated an entirely different approach. A Tellarian delegate spoke up. We should condemn this action. The humans are dragging us toward a wider conflict with the Kroth Empire. Their reckless behavior threatens council neutrality. But Vren noticed something interesting. Several younger representatives looked uncomfortable with that statement. He recognized the expression, shame. An ambassador from the Quinn collective stood. The Quinn were an insectoid species known for collective decision-making and extreme caution. They had never taken military action in their 3,000 years as a spacefaring civilization. The humans are showing us what we have become, the Quinn ambassador said. We built this council on principles of mutual support and shared prosperity. But when the Kroth began conquering our neighbors, we did nothing. When the Dalwyn faced extinction, we offered sympathy but no aid. We calculated that preserving ourselves was more important than defending others. The Quinn ambassador gestured toward the battle footage still playing on screens. Those humans could have made the same calculation. They are one small species facing an empire that has crushed civilizations far older than theirs. But they looked at refugees who had once saved them and decided some debts cannot be measured in strategic advantage. Vren watched other representatives shift uncomfortably. The Quinn had just said what many were thinking but few wanted to admit. Dr. Raymond Kim's face appeared on communication screens throughout the chamber. The human scientist had requested speaking time to address the council directly. Members of the Galactic Trade Council, I am broadcasting from Earth. I want to inform you about a new human initiative. We are establishing the Defensive Technology Sharing Program. Any species willing to protect their borders from Kroth expansion will receive human military innovations free of charge. Shocked silence filled the chamber. We are offering railgun designs, electronic warfare systems, shield modifications, and tactical training. We ask no payment, no trade agreements, no political alliances. We only ask that species use these tools to defend themselves and their neighbors. A Solth military advisor whispered to Vren, the technology they are offering is worth billions in trade value. Why would they give it away? Vren understood. Because they want to prove a point. They want to show the galaxy that defending civilization is more important than profit. Raymond continued. 300 years ago, the Darwin gave us medical technology that saved billions of human lives. They asked nothing in return. We learned from their example that some things should be shared freely because sharing them makes everyone stronger. If even one species uses our technology to protect innocent lives, then we have honored the Darwin legacy. After Raymond disconnected, Lucy Grant's face appeared. The human ambassador looked tired but resolute. I have one more message for this council. To every species watching, to every world afraid of Croth expansion, to every civilization that remembers what principles used to mean, humanity stands ready to defend any species that asks for help. We will not force our protection on anyone, but if you choose to stand against conquest, you will not stand alone. The transmission ended. Vren looked around the chamber. Some representatives appeared angry at the implicit criticism of council inaction. Others looked thoughtful, but several looked ashamed. A message arrived on his private channel. It was from his own government, the South Confederacy Military Command. They wanted his assessment of the situation. Vren composed his response carefully. The humans have changed the equation. For decades, we all assumed the Croth were unstoppable because resisting them was too costly. Every species made the rational choice to preserve themselves. But the humans have demonstrated that rationality is not the only factor in warfare. They fight with something we have forgotten: conviction, loyalty, honor to those who showed them mercy in their past. He paused, considering his next words. I recommend we begin covert military preparations. Not because the humans have convinced me to fight for the Darwin, but because they have reminded me what happens to civilizations that only make decisions based on fear. The Croth have been expanding because we all decided someone else's destruction was acceptable. The humans are forcing us to confront what that makes us. Over the following weeks, subtle changes began across the galaxy. Species that had maintained strict neutrality started upgrading defensive systems. Trade guilds quietly stopped dealing with Croth suppliers. Minor worlds that had submitted to Croth demands began showing signs of resistance. In a private meeting with his inner council, Vren admitted something he would never say publicly. The humans are going to lose their war with the Croth Empire. Their military forces are too small, their technology insufficient, their experience limited. But they have already won something more important. They have reminded the galaxy what courage looks like, what principles look like, what civilization is supposed to look like. His chief advisor asked, "What does that mean for the South Confederacy?" Vren was quiet for a long moment, watching footage of human ships fighting against impossible odds to protect aliens they had never met. It means we have a choice to make. We can watch the humans die defending principles we claim to share, or we can remember that we once believed in those principles ourselves. Across the galaxy, other leaders were having similar conversations. The humans had set something in motion that could not be stopped. Not with logic, not with calculation, not with fear. They had reminded everyone what it meant to be civilized. The Croth Grand Fleet assembled at the border of contested space, 3,000 warships representing the full might of an empire that had never tasted defeat. Commander Harak had been promoted to Supreme Marshal after his report on human tactics reached the Imperial Court. Now he commanded the largest military force the Croth had deployed in a generation. His orders were absolute: destroy the human fleets, conquer the Darwin worlds, make an example that would discourage any other species from resisting Croth expansion. All ships report ready, Marshal. We await your command. Harak studied tactical displays showing human defensive positions. Intelligence estimated 800 human ships guarding the Darwin territories. Good odds for the Croth, even accounting for human unpredictability. Begin the attack, all forces advance. The Grand Fleet moved forward, confident in their numerical superiority and technological advantage. Harak expected the humans to fight desperately as they had before, inflicting casualties, but ultimately being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Then space exploded with new arrivals. Dozens of ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, their transponder signals identifying them as Salth Confederacy vessels. Hundreds more appeared moments later, bearing the markings of the Quinn Collective, the Tellarian Assembly, the Wavian Harmony, and 6 other Council species. Harak stared at his displays in disbelief. The combined fleet now numbered over 5,000 ships. His communication systems chimed with an incoming transmission. High Chancellor Vren's scaled face appeared on screen, looking older but somehow more alive than during their last council meeting. Marshal Harak, this is the combined defense fleet representing 9 species of the Galactic Trade Council. Your advance ends here. Chancellor, this is not your conflict. We have no quarrel with the Salth Confederacy. That is where you are wrong, Marshal. Humanity reminded us of something we had forgotten. When one species faces extinction for defending their friends, and the rest of the galaxy watches in silence, we all become accomplices to that extinction. The Salth Confederacy will not be accomplices, neither will any of the species here. Another transmission came through. Admiral Patricia Cole appeared on a parallel channel. Marshal, I want to thank you for giving us time to coordinate with our friends. Took a few weeks to convince everyone that standing together was better than falling separately. But humans are pretty good at stubborn arguments when we believe in something. A Quinn commander added their voice. The humans shared their defensive technology with us freely, asking nothing in return. They taught us tactics we never considered, showed us how to fight for something beyond self-preservation. We may be cautious by nature, but we are not cowards. Harak realized his empire had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had assumed species would always prioritize individual survival over collective defense. They had been right for centuries, but the humans had changed the equation. You are all fools. United or not, you will suffer the same fate as the Dalwin if you oppose us. Patricia smiled without humor. The thing about humans, Marshal, is that we have very long memories. 300 years ago, we were dying and helpless. The Dalwin saved us. That act of kindness taught us what civilization really means. Not conquest or accumulation, but protecting those who cannot protect themselves. She gestured toward the massive fleet surrounding her command ship. You are looking at what happens when one act of compassion echoes across centuries. The Dalwin saved us. We protected them. Others watched us sacrifice for our friends and remembered what they used to believe. And now here we all are, ready to stop your empire's expansion because one species chose kindness 300 years ago. The battle began, with neither side seeking quarter. But this time, the humans were not fighting alone. Salth warships used their heavy armor to shield smaller human vessels. Quinn fighters coordinated attacks with perfect hive mind efficiency. Tellarian cruisers deployed defensive screens that protected entire formations. Every species brought their unique strengths to the battle, coordinated through shared tactical networks that human engineers had helped design. The Kroth fought well. Their forces were experienced, disciplined, professional, but they faced something they had never encountered before. A coalition fighting not for territory or resources, but for principle. Ships protecting each other regardless of species. Crews sacrificing themselves to save allies they had met weeks ago. Harak watched his grand fleet being systematically destroyed, not through superior weapons or tactics, but through coordination born of shared purpose. Every time Kroth forces created an advantage, allied ships filled the gap. Every breakthrough was countered by reinforcements from unexpected directions. And throughout the battle, the humans kept broadcasting. Stories of the Dalwin rescue, testimonials from human families saved by alien compassion, images of Dalwin and human children studying together in schools built on both species' worlds. They are trying to demoralize us. his tactical officer said. But Herrick understood better. They were not targeting Croth morale. They were broadcasting to every species in the galaxy, showing them what civilization looked like when it chose principles over profit. After 6 hours, the Croth Grand Fleet began withdrawing, not retreating in panic, but conducting an organized withdrawal that preserved remaining forces. Herrick had lost 1,200 ships. The Allied forces had lost nearly as many, but they had reserves arriving. More species were joining the defensive coalition even as the battle continued. His communication systems chimed one final time. Patricia Cole appeared again, her uniform scorched, her face exhausted. Marshal Herrick, go back to your empire and tell them something. Tell them they have awakened something they do not understand. Tell them humans do not forget kindness, and we do not abandon friends. Tell them every species watching this battle is learning the same lesson. She paused, letting her words carry weight. The Croth Empire expanded because everyone was afraid to stand together. That era ended today. You can keep your conquered worlds, but you will not take one more, because now you face not one species, but a galaxy that remembered what it means to be civilized. 3 months after the battle, Elder Torrin stood with Lucy Grant in the rebuilt Memorial Hall on Earth. New sections had been added, commemorating the human soldiers who died defending the Dalwyn, and the Allied forces who joined them in standing against the Croth Empire. "We saved you from a plague 300 years ago," Torrin said softly. "You saved us from extinction. I do not know how to measure which debt was greater." Lucy smiled. "Neither debt is paid, Elder. That is the beautiful part. The Dalwyn saved humanity, teaching us about compassion. We protected the Dalwyn, teaching others about loyalty. Now the galaxy has learned from both our examples. Every species that joined the fight created new bonds, new obligations, new friendships that will echo for centuries." She gestured toward the memorial walls, where names from a dozen species were inscribed alongside human casualties. This is how civilization survives, not through conquest or isolation, but through chains of kindness that span generations. The Dalwyn will remember humanity's sacrifice. We will remember their original rescue. The Salth will remember fighting alongside us. The Quinn will remember learning courage from our example. On, creating a web of mutual obligation that makes the galaxy stronger. Torrin's large eyes reflected the memorial lights, so the debt is never fully repaid. Never, and that is exactly as it should be. Because the moment we believe we have paid everything we owe, we stop being the kind of people worth saving in the first place. Across the galaxy, human and Dalwyn children studied together in schools on both species' worlds, learning the intertwined history that bound their civilizations. The Galactic Trade Council had transformed into an active defensive alliance, with humans serving as coordinators of shared military technologies and tactical training. The Croth Empire withdrew behind their borders, their expansion permanently halted by species who had remembered that some things were worth fighting for. And in a small classroom on Saratha Colony, a Dalwyn teacher told her mixed-species students about the day humanity repaid a debt 300 years old, and how that payment made the entire galaxy tremble with the realization that honor, loyalty, and compassion were not weaknesses to be exploited, but strengths that could reshape the balance of power among the stars. The lesson ended with a simple truth that every child understood. Civilization is measured not by what you can take, but by what you are willing to give for those who once gave to you.